Hey everyone, and welcome to your deep dive. Today we're going to be diving into something I think you'll find pretty fascinating. Dopamine.
Yeah,
And not just like as the feel-good chemical, but as that engine that really drives our desires and ultimately our motivation to do well, anything.
it's really about what makes us want to take an action. And that gets really interesting when you start to realize we can actually kind of rewire that motivation.
Exactly. And the source for today's deep dive is this Better Than Yesterday YouTube video. It's called How I Tricked My Brain to Like Doing Hard Things.
Mhm.
It's all about dopamine detox. And it really begs the question, what if our brains are so overloaded that we're actually less driven to do the things that really matter?
Yeah, it's like having a car with a step gas pedal, just all acceleration, no control.
I like that. So to kick off our deep dive today, we're starting with, get this, lab rats who love their dopamine hits so much they would rather starve than stop getting them.
It's a striking image, right? They were given this lever that would stimulate their brain's reward center, and they would just press it obsessively. Choosing that rush over food, over sleep, they'd collapse from exhaustion before giving up the lever.
Wow, that's hardcore.
Yeah.
But we're not rats, right?
Okay.
So how does this apply to us humans?
Well, think about it. The pull of that endless Instagram scroll, or that next level in a game,
Hmm?
or even that instant online purchase satisfaction, our brains, just like those rats, prioritize what promises that quick dopamine surge. It's not just about liking the activity itself, it's about chasing that feeling that we get from it.
So you're saying it's not just laziness when we just can't tear ourselves away from those things. It's our brain's wiring basically taking over.
Exactly. And this is where dopamine tolerance comes in. Just like building a tolerance to a substance, our brains get used to high levels of stimulation. So we need more and more to hit that same dopamine high. And suddenly those everyday things, work, hobbies, even meaningful conversations just can't compete.
So we're chasing a constantly moving target, always needing a bigger hit just to feel something.
It's that hedonic treadmill idea. You just keep running and running, but never actually reach a point of lasting satisfaction. And because of this dopamine tolerance, you might find those things you used to enjoy suddenly feel, well, kind of blah.
Like your brain is saying, been there, done that. Where's the real excitement?
Precisely. And that, my friend, is the dopamine trap. We're wired to seek those dopamine highs, but when they become the main focus, we kind of lose sight of those activities that provide that deeper, more sustainable satisfaction.
Okay, so we're stuck in this dopamine trap. Our brains are chasing those instant highs. But how do we get off this hedonic treadmill? Is there even a way to hit reset on our reward system?
That is where dopamine detox comes in. It's about strategically embracing boredom.
Yeah, you heard that right, boredom. To recalibrate your brain's reward system.
Okay. I'm intrigued, but I'm also a little terrified. So, does this involve me moving to a yurt and living off the grid? Well, it's not quite that extreme. There's two main approaches. The first is a radical detox. That would be like a full day avoiding all high dopamine activities. No internet, no technology, no junk food, nothing that's designed for that instant gratification.
Look, that's where I think I'd struggle. I swear my phone knows when I'm about to disconnect. What's the less digitally monastic approach, I guess?
That would be the weekly detox. Instead of doing the full day, you just pick one day a week and you abstain completely from a specific high dopamine behavior.
So if I'm constantly checking social media, I would just choose one day a week to completely disconnect.
Exactly. Or maybe you avoid video games for a day. Or resist those impulse online purchases. The key is really consistency. Even those smaller detoxes done regularly can make a really big difference over time.
Yeah, it's about retraining our brains to find pleasure in things that are actually good for us, not just instantly gratifying. But let's be real for a second. Boredom is a tough opponent.
That's exactly the point. It's like developing a taste for simpler foods. Remember those lab rats? If all they knew was that lever-induced dopamine rush, regular food probably seemed terribly dull.
Right.
But by limiting those artificial highs, suddenly those quote-unquote regular activities become more appealing.
So instead of that constant craving for the next notification or the next level or the next quick fix, we start to appreciate things like reading a book or having a face-to-face conversation or even just enjoying some peace and quiet.
Precisely. Those things might seem boring at first, especially when your brain is just so used to that constant barrage of stimulation. But a dopamine detox can really help you to rediscover the joy in those quieter, more meaningful experiences.
I like it. So we've gone from these dopamine-addicted rats to embracing boredom.
Yeah.
But this doesn't mean we have to live a life devoid of joy,
Yeah.
right? We don't have to become dopamine hermits.
No, not at all. It's not about eliminating joy altogether. It's more about shifting from simply avoiding dopamine to strategically connecting it to the things that we actually want to do, the activities that are aligned with like our goals and values.
I like where this is going. So instead of being controlled by these dopamine cravings, we can actually like control them.
Exactly. Think of it as dopamine hacking. We can actually leverage these high dopamine activities as rewards for engaging in activities that might be lower on that instant gratification scale, but ultimately more rewarding in the long run.
Okay, give me an example. How does this dopamine hacking work in real life?
Okay, so let's say your goal is to write more, but you find yourself constantly getting sucked into social media. You could set a rule for yourself. For every 30 minutes of focused writing, you earn 15 minutes of guilt-free social media scrolling.
Okay, so instead of viewing social media as like the enemy,
Hmm.
it becomes like a reward, a little something to look forward to.
Precisely. You're essentially training your brain to associate a pleasurable activity with a productive one. The YouTuber we were talking about actually does this with his work. For every hour of what he calls low dopamine work, things like creating content, practicing piano, even cleaning his apartment, he allows himself 15 minutes of high dopamine internet time at the end of the day.
So he's like gamifying his life, using those quick dopamine hits as rewards for tackling those things that he knows are good for him in the long run.
That's a great way to put it. And it doesn't have to be internet time. Maybe your reward is a walk in nature or a phone call with a friend, or that delicious piece of dark chocolate you've been saving.
It's really about finding what works for you. It's like figuring out what your brain finds truly rewarding and using that to your advantage.
Yes, it's about taking control of your dopamine response instead of letting it control you.
This has been incredibly eye-opening. I feel like we're all susceptible to that allure of instant gratification, especially in this like hyper-connected world that we live in. But we don't have to be slaves to our own brain chemistry.
We really don't. By understanding how dopamine works, we can make more conscious choices about how we engage with technology, how we manage our cravings, and how we find joy in the activities that truly matter.
I love that. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one small change that our listeners can make this week to be more mindful of their own dopamine intake?
That's a great question. I would say think about one area where you feel that pull of instant gratification the strongest. Maybe it's social media, maybe it's online shopping, maybe it's something else entirely. But once you've identified that area, challenge yourself to try just like a mini dopamine detox, even if it's just for a couple hours. You could even try experimenting with creating a reward system like we discussed, see what happens. You might be surprised at how much you actually enjoy those low dopamine activities when you give your brain a chance to reset and rediscover the joy in the simpler things.
I love that challenge. Well, that's it for today's deep dive, everyone. We hope you enjoyed it. And remember, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into this fascinating world around you.